In a world where everyone is talking, arguing, and trying to prove their worth, the person who masters restraint holds the real power. Restraint isn't weakness, it's control. It's about knowing when to engage and when to step back. It's about understanding that your presence is a gift and your silence can be more powerful than 1,000 words. Most people believe that power is about being the loudest person in the room. They think if they assert themselves enough, explain themselves enough, or push their point long enough, they will win. But here's the reality. True power doesn't come from force, it comes from control. Control over your emotions, control over your reactions, control over your presence. Think about the last time someone tried to argue with you or prove you wrong. If you engaged in the argument, you gave them what they wanted, your energy. You fed into their desire for validation. But if you stepped back, if you stayed silent, they were left with their own words, their own thoughts echoing in their mind. They had to sit with it, and that's uncomfortable. Restraint creates mystery. It makes people wonder what you're thinking, why you're not reacting, why you're not engaging the way they expect. And when people start wondering, they start paying attention. Suddenly, you become the one in control of the situation. The science of restraint. There's a psychological principle known as the power of anticipation. Human beings crave closure. When someone speaks, we expect a response. When someone asks a question, we expect an answer. When someone pushes, we expect resistance. But when that response doesn't come, the brain keeps searching for it. It doesn't feel complete. That's why silence is so powerful. It forces the other person to keep thinking about you, to keep replaying the situation in their mind. They start questioning their own actions, their own words. They wonder if they made the right move, if they misunderstood you, if they misjudged your value. And the more they think about you, the more power you hold over them. Most people don't know how to handle silence. They fill every space with words, thinking that more explanation, more talking, more convincing will make people see their value. But in reality, the opposite is true. Imagine you're negotiating a deal. You state your offer and then stay completely silent. No justification, no backtracking, no nervous laughter, just silence. What happens? The other person feels the weight of that silence. They feel the pressure to fill the space. They start second-guessing their position, and often they'll give you exactly what you want just to break that tension. That's the power of restraint. Restraint in personal relationships. Now, let's bring this into real life. Think about the people who have hurt you, who have taken you for granted, who have dismissed your worth. How did you react? Did you try to explain yourself? Did you try to prove to them why they should value you? Now, ask yourself, did it work? Most of the time, when you chase after someone's validation, they lose respect for you. It's not because you're not worthy, but because chasing signals neediness, and neediness is the opposite of power. But what happens when you stop chasing? What happens when you step back and say nothing? At first, they might not notice. They might assume you'll always be there. But as time passes, something shifts. They feel your absence. They start wondering why you haven't reached out. They start questioning why you're no longer engaging. And suddenly the dynamic changes. Now they are the ones feeling the void. They are the ones wondering if they made a mistake. They are the ones wanting to reach out, to reconnect, to pull you back in. Because here's the truth. People only truly value what they believe they might lose. Restraint in business and leadership, the same principle applies in business and leadership. Look at the most powerful leaders in the world. Do they constantly talk, constantly explain, constantly seek approval? No. They speak with purpose. They listen more than they speak. And when they do speak, every word carries weight. Why? Because restraint builds authority. It signals that you are in control, that you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. And that in itself demands respect. Think about the last time you saw a leader or a public figure handle a crisis. The ones who panic, who over-explain, who desperately try to fix their image, those are the ones who lose credibility. But the ones who remain calm, who speak only when necessary, who don't let the noise shake them, those are the ones people trust. Restraint isn't about being passive. It's about being strategic. It's about knowing when to engage and when to hold back. And when you master that, you become unstoppable. The final thought, but not the ending. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. Your value isn't in how loudly you speak, how much you explain, or how hard you fight for attention. Your power is in knowing when to step back, when to stay silent, and when to let the world realize just how much they need you. People don't chase what is readily available. They chase what they believe is rare, what they think they might lose, what they are uncertain they can have. This is the law of scarcity, the undeniable truth that value increases when something becomes less accessible. Look around at the world. The most exclusive clubs have long waiting lists. The most expensive brands don't go on sale. The most influential people are not the ones constantly seeking attention. They are the ones whose time and presence are limited. Scarcity creates desire. It forces people to pay attention. And when applied to your life, it becomes one of the most powerful psychological levers you can pull. The moment you stop making yourself so available, whether it's in business, relationships, or personal interactions, is the moment people start wanting you more. But most people get this backwards. They believe that if they give more, if they overextend themselves, if they are always there, always responding, always giving, then people will appreciate them more. But that's not how human nature works. The psychology of scarcity is wired into the human brain. It's a survival mechanism. When something becomes less available, our minds instinctively assign it greater value. This is why products labeled limited edition sell out faster. It's why we crave the attention of people who seem disinterested. It's why we take for granted the people who are always there, yet obsess over the ones who pull away. There's a famous experiment in psychology that demonstrates this perfectly. 2 identical jars of cookies were placed in front of participants. One jar was nearly full while the other had only a few cookies left. Even though the cookies were exactly the same, people rated the ones in the nearly empty jar as more valuable. Why? Because they assumed that if there were fewer, they must be better. Now think about how this applies to you. If you are always available, always giving, always there, people begin to see you like the full jar of cookies, common, replaceable, easily accessible. But when you step back, when you become less available, when you stop offering yourself so freely, suddenly you become the scarce resource. And when something is scarce, people want it more. Why? People take you for granted. Most of the time, people don't appreciate what's in front of them until it's gone. They assume you'll always be there. They assume your kindness, your time, your energy is unlimited. And because you keep giving, because you keep showing up, they don't feel the need to value it. But the moment you step back, everything changes. Think about a time when someone important in your life suddenly withdrew. Maybe a friend stopped calling. Maybe a boss who once praised your work became indifferent. Maybe someone you cared about no longer seemed interested. What happened? You noticed. You questioned. You wondered if you did something wrong. Because when something that was once abundant becomes scarce, our minds fixate on it. We want it back. Now imagine flipping this dynamic in your own life. Imagine being the person who is no longer always available, no longer always reaching out, no longer always proving themselves. Suddenly the people who took you for granted begin to notice. They begin to feel the loss. They begin to crave what they once had unlimited access to. This isn't manipulation, this is human nature. And understanding it gives you control. Applying scarcity in relationships. Look at the relationships in your life. Are you constantly giving and not receiving? Do people only seem to value you when you pull away? If so, it's time to start making yourself scarce. Not out of spite, not as a game, but as a way to set a new standard. When you always answer immediately, people assume they can always reach you. When you always say yes, people assume you have no boundaries. When you always accommodate, people assume you have nothing better to do. But when you start pausing before responding, when you start saying no, when you start putting yourself first, people take notice. They start to wonder what changed. They start to question why you're no longer so accessible. And that's when they begin to appreciate what they once took for granted, scarcity in business and leadership. The most powerful brands in the world leverage scarcity to create demand. Luxury brands don't flood the market with their products. They limit supply. They create waiting lists. They make people work to get in. And because of this, their value skyrockets. The same principle applies to your personal brand, your career, your leadership. If you are always chasing opportunities, always making yourself available, always saying yes to everything, you appear common. But if you are selective, if you are strategic, if you make people work for your time and attention, suddenly you are in demand. Successful leaders don't attend every meeting. They don't say yes to every request. They don't make themselves available to just anyone. And because of that, when they do show up, people listen. The shift that changes everything. The moment you realize that your time, your energy, and your presence are valuable is the moment everything changes. You no longer feel the need to chase. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself. You no longer feel the need to beg for recognition, because now you understand that the less accessible you are, the more valuable you become. In every interaction, in every conversation, in every situation, you are either controlling the frame or you are being controlled by it. The frame is the underlying power dynamic of any exchange. It dictates who has influence, whose perspective dominates, and who ultimately holds the upper hand. The person who controls the frame controls the interaction. Most people don't realize this. They think words alone are what matter. They think if they just explain themselves well enough, if they just say the right things, if they just prove their point, they'll win. But the truth is, the frame is set before the first word is spoken. Control the frame and you dictate how others see you. Lose the frame and you'll always be reacting, always defending, always chasing after respect instead of commanding it. And one of the most powerful ways to control the frame, step back, stay silent, let them come to you. The battle of frames, every conversation is a battle of frames. Think of two people negotiating a deal. One person walks in confidently, speaks slowly, and doesn't rush to fill the silence. The other person fidgets, talks rapidly, and constantly tries to justify their position. Who do you think holds the power? It's not the person talking the most. It's the one who can sit with silence. The one who doesn't feel the need to explain. The one who waits while the other scrambles. Why? Because they control the frame. When you're the one who speaks first, you're revealing your position. When you over-explain, you signal insecurity. When you rush to fill silence, you show that you're uncomfortable, and discomfort is weakness in the battle of frames. But when you step back, when you stay silent, when you refuse to react emotionally, you send a completely different message. You signal that you are in control. You force the other person to lean in. You make them wonder what you're thinking. And in doing so, you take control of the interaction without saying a word. How people lose the frame, most people lose the frame the moment they start defending themselves. Someone questions their worth and they immediately try to prove it. Someone challenges their decision and they start justifying it. Someone pulls away and they start chasing. But here's the problem. The moment you start explaining, you're already losing. When you defend yourself, you're accepting the other person's frame. You're operating on their terms. You're saying, yes, your judgment matters so much that I need to prove myself to you. And that gives them power. But when you refuse to engage in that dynamic, when you step back, when you stay silent, when you let them question their own assumptions, now you are in control. Because suddenly the burden shifts. Instead of you proving your worth, they start wondering if they underestimated you. Instead of you chasing them, they start feeling the void you left behind. Instead of you reacting to their frame, they begin reacting to yours. Frame control in relationships. Look at any dynamic between two people, romantic, business, social. The one who controls the frame is the one who dictates the relationship. Have you ever noticed how the person who cares less in a relationship has more power? It's not about being cold or manipulative. It's about who is setting the terms. The one who is always available, always explaining, always seeking reassurance, this person has surrendered the frame. The one who is mysterious, unpredictable, and not overly concerned about proving anything, that's the one who holds the power. It's the same reason why someone who suddenly becomes distant makes the other person obsessed with figuring out why. It's because they shifted the frame. They made the other person feel like something has changed, and now the other person is reacting to them instead of the other way around. And the more you react, the less control you have. Frame control in business and leadership. Think about the most respected leaders. Do they rush to prove themselves? Do they beg for validation? Do they feel the need to explain every decision? No, they speak with purpose. They don't fill every silence. They let their presence do the work. A leader who constantly seeks approval loses respect. A leader who sets the vision, stays composed, and doesn't react emotionally commands it. The same applies to negotiations. The moment you start trying to convince the other person why you're right, you've already lost the frame. But when you sit back, when you stay silent, when you let the other person fill the space, suddenly you have the advantage because now they're working to get a reaction from you, and when people start working to earn your response, you've already won. The silent power move, one of the most powerful things you can do in any situation is pause. Pause before you answer. Pause before you react. Pause before you explain. Most people can't handle silence. They feel the need to fill it. They get uncomfortable. They start talking more, justifying more, revealing more. And every word they say gives you more control. When someone challenges you, don't react. Just look at them. Let them feel the weight of their own words. Let them start questioning themselves. When someone tries to pressure you into a decision, don't rush. Take your time. The longer you wait, the more uncertain they become. When someone pulls away from you, don't chase. Just step back. Stay silent. Let them wonder why. And in that space, in that void you create, they will start to feel the shift in power. They will start questioning themselves instead of questioning you. Because now, they are reacting to your frame. There is one fundamental truth that too many people ignore. What is given freely is never truly valued. People don't appreciate what comes too easily. They don't cherish what they didn't have to work for. The things that require effort, investment, and commitment, those are the things people respect, admire, and fight to keep. Yet most people give themselves away too easily. They give their time, energy, love, attention, and effort to people who haven't done a single thing to earn it. They overextend, over-explain, over-give, thinking that if they just give enough, the other person will finally see their worth. But here's the harsh reality. When you give too much too soon, people assume it has no value. The key is to flip the script. Instead of proving yourself to others, make them prove themselves to you. The cost of giving yourself away freely. Think about the things in life that you've worked the hardest for. Maybe it was a degree, a job, a business, or even a personal transformation. Whatever it was, you valued it because it required something from you. It demanded your time, effort, sacrifice, and dedication. Now think about the things that were handed to you effortlessly. Did they hold the same weight? Probably not. The same principle applies to how people perceive you. If you are always available, always saying yes, always making things easy for others, they assume it doesn't cost much to have you in their life. They assume your time and energy must not be that valuable because if it were, you wouldn't be giving it away so easily. But when you start making people earn your time, your attention, your presence, that's when they start valuing it. The psychology of effort and investment. There's a psychological concept known as the effort justification principle. People value something more when they have to put in effort to attain it. This is why high-end brands don't give away their products for free. It's why exclusive clubs have long waiting lists. It's why people are more committed to relationships and friendships where they had to put in effort to build a connection. People don't respect what is easy. They respect what they had to work for. Yet most people do the opposite. They chase after people who show little interest. They give endlessly without expecting anything in return. They pour energy into situations where no one is reciprocating. And in doing so, they send a subconscious message. I am not a prize. I am not something rare. I am something you can have without effort. That message is the quickest way to lose respect, influence, and value in the eyes of others. Flipping the script, making people earn it. So how do you shift the dynamic? How do you move from constantly giving to making people work for your time and presence? Set standards and stick to them. If you don't set the terms for how people treat you, they will set them for you. Decide what you will and won't tolerate. If someone doesn't meet that standard, step back. Don't explain, don't argue, just remove yourself. The right people will step up and the wrong ones will fade away. Don't be easily impressed. People respect those who have discernment. If you're overly eager, if you praise too easily, if you accept anyone and anything without question, you come across as someone who has low standards. Make people prove their worth before you invest your energy in them. Give in proportion to what you receive. Relationships, whether personal, professional, or social, should be a balanced exchange. If you're the only one putting in effort, it's time to stop. Give as much as you're receiving, no more, no less. This creates a natural filtering system where only those who truly value you will stick around. Be comfortable saying no. The most powerful people in the world are not the ones who say yes to everything. They are the ones who say no. No to unworthy opportunities. No to energy-draining people. No to anything that doesn't align with their self-respect. Your no is your boundary, and boundaries command respect. Let people miss you when you are always available, always responding, always ready to give. People don't get the chance to experience life without you. And if they never experience your absence, they'll never truly appreciate your presence. Create space. Let people feel the void. If they care, they'll come looking. If they don't, they were never worth your time. The shift in perception. When you start making people earn it, something interesting happens. People who once took you for granted start paying attention. People who dismissed you begin to chase. People who assumed you'd always be there suddenly feel the need to prove themselves. Why? Because you've changed the frame. Instead of seeking validation, you've become the one who decides who is worthy of your time. Instead of proving your worth, you've made others prove theirs. Instead of chasing, you've become the one being pursued. And the ones who step up, those are the ones who truly value you. The ones who disappear, they were never meant to stay anyway.